Hello and welcome to the Life in Recovery podcast, episode 79 with me, John Loxley. I hope you're doing well. This episode of the podcast is a series of kind of short talks that I did whilst I was walking my dog Teddy across the local common and around the local area, which I titled Ted Walks, and the subjects range from mental health to general wellness, God, forgiveness, and a range of other topics. So I've been posting them on my social media. If you're a friend on Facebook, then you will probably have seen the videos, but if not, you obviously won't have heard them. And yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting for people to listen to, and I hope that you get something from it. So without further ado, I give you my series of TED Walks. I'm just walking the dog over the local common. It's nice and fresh today. There he is, little Teddy. I've been for a run this morning. I've got up, I've done my prayers, I've done my meditation, done a little bit of spiritual reading, taken my vitamins. Been for a run, 15-20 minutes, just to blow away the cobwebs. I made a decision last night that I was going to stop eating as much chocolate because my chocolate addiction has been going pretty crazy over especially over the lockdowns. And I've also made a decision that I'm going to start going to bed a little bit earlier. So the evening routine now will be a bit of meditation, a bit of prayer, doing my my nightly inventory, and then getting to bed before 11 o'clock. So Happy New Year, everybody. I don't really do New Year's resolutions. I always think that a resolution ends up being broken. So I try to make firm decisions. So this is the decision. These are the decisions that I've made for the new year, and I'm going to stick to them. And yeah, you've got to keep your body, your mind and your spirit healthy, especially in these testing times. You know, there's a lot of people out there that are really struggling with the mental health, and when you're struggling with your mental health, especially if you're not getting enough sleep, you tend to struggle with your physical health as well. Once those two things are in jeopardy, you know, your spirit, that part of you, whatever you want to call it, consciousness, your soul, you know, it seems to kind of diminish. The pilot light seems to get dimmer, and you know, life becomes more and more difficult. So I think the main message here is to concentrate on the things that you know keep you fit and well and healthy, and especially sleep and exercise. Just walking Teddy again after a hard day's work. Say hello, Teddy. Hello. Yeah, it's really good to stretch the legs and decompress from the day when I've been sat in front of a computer all day long. And it's just really good for my mental health, you know. Getting out for a walk for 20-25 minutes. I usually call somebody, have a bit of a chat about how things are going for me. That's massively important, that is, in my recovery, is having people to talk to and people to you know, offload and let them know how I'm doing, and ask them how they're doing as well, you know, be interested in other people's lives. Yeah, it's really important. But yeah, the walking side of it, massive. Before I had a dog, I used to go to the gym regularly, usually every other day. But you know, I'd get in the gym and I'd have my headphones on. I'd be listening to either banging hard house music or some trance or house music, you know, to kind of get me pumped up, especially if I was on the running machine. And I don't do that now when I come out for a walk. I don't put my headphones in. I don't listen to any music or any podcasts or anything like that. I just come out and enjoy the nature and let my head settle, you know, process all the things that have been going on during the day. And it just decompresses me for the evening so that I can go back home and chill out with the family. Well, I say chill out, I've got a baby to look after, 2 stepkids to deal with, and I've got to help my missus around the house, so get all the jobs done first, family responsibilities, and then you know, chill out in the evenings. So yeah, my advice is, if you haven't got a pet that you can walk, just get out there and walk for at least 20-25 minutes, twice a day if you can, especially during this difficult time. You know, lots of people's mental health is suffering, and pick up the phone, speak to people, tell people how you're doing, ask them for help if you're not doing very well. That's massive, you know. Asking for help is huge. So anyway, peace and love, and goodbye for now. Hello again. It's another Ted walk. There he is, Teddy. I wanted to talk today about God and higher powers, because it's something that came up in a meeting that I went to last night, a 12-step meeting, and the passage that was read out at the beginning of the meeting was from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it is essential. I think it's page 56 if I'm not mistaken, and it basically tells you the reason why they wrote the big book, and it says something along the lines of, we wrote this book to introduce you to a higher power that will solve your problem. And this subject of God and a higher power is it's very, very contentious. I think the majority of people that come to 12-step fellowships and don't stay, don't stick around, is primarily because of the God word. And I know from my own experience that you know, when I first joined 12-step fellowships, that was the thing that initially kind of put me off, I suppose, because, you know, I'm not religious. I'm still not religious today. I've never been religious. I grew up in a kind of non-religious household, really. I mean, despite the fact that my dad's a Catholic and my mum's a Protestant, and both their mothers, my grandmothers, were both big into religion and went to the church regularly. I wasn't raised that way, which was fine by me. You know, I had no real interest in religion. I went to church a few times with my grandmas, and you know, it wasn't really for me. I didn't really get what all the fuss was about, to be honest. But despite that, I always had this feeling inside that there was something bigger than me. You know, I was always a seeker from quite an early age. I remember me and my best mate David talking till, you know, the early hours of the morning when he'd kind of sleep over at my house or I'd sleep over at his house, about kind of ghosts and, you know, supernatural things and the Loch Ness monster and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I was just really, really interested in, you know, kind of, yeah, the supernatural, basically. So, you know, as I got older, all that kind of left me, and I, you know, I didn't have any interest in it. And not surprisingly, the more I drank and took drugs, the more disconnected from all that stuff I became. And I suppose I look back on it now and I think the more disconnected from my spirit or my soul is, consciousness is the way that I explain it now. I mean, I don't really see any major difference between consciousness and a soul. We know that we're conscious. We know that there is some element of us that is, well, in my opinion, there's some element of us that isn't physical matter. And without going into loads of detail and telling loads of different stories, through meditation, and especially a 10-day silent meditation retreat in 2018, and also through the use of psychedelics. So I went on an ayahuasca retreat in 2017, and I also had a journey in the woods with psilocybin with my friend Luke. Magic mushrooms, for anybody that doesn't know what psilocybin is. And these were both in recovery, so a lot of people were questioning that when I originally decided to take psychedelics. But I'd done a lot of research when I was writing my books, and the two things that clinched it for me was, one, I was convinced that they weren't addictive through all the research that I'd done, and two, AA co-founder Bill Wilson experimented with psychedelics about 10 years into his recovery, with LSD specifically, and I think possibly psilocybin as well. And he had unbelievable experiences with them, and as a result of those experiences, he actually wrote the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book with his one of his sponsees, who I believe was called Tom. And he also encouraged Tom to use LSD, which he did. And it would, I don't know where that would have gone had the war on drugs not begun by President Richard Nixon. Who knows how that would have kind of infiltrated the 12-step fellowships. And I know a lot of people out there are of the mind of, don't use any mind or mood altering substances when you're in recovery, and that's cool. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. But for me personally, I'm an alcoholic. I don't drink alcohol. I'm abstinent, and I have been for over 10 years. But I still suffer with the spiritual malady. So I use these psychedelics in order to have spiritual experiences, basically. And the ayahuasca experience was the greatest spiritual experience of my life so far. And the psilocybin experience was also massively spiritual, and kind of really integrated the ayahuasca experience. And the ayahuasca experience confirmed to me with absolutely no doubt whatsoever that there is a power greater than me, that there is some sort of power, some sort of positive force that is the underlying, what I call the organising principle. So my higher power, that is what I've called it, TOP for short, TOP, the organising principle, because it's the basis of everything. The universe itself is essentially imbued with this, consciousness. And I believe that it is kind of the alpha and the omega. I believe that consciousness, essentially vibrating at different frequencies of energy, manifests as matter, and that is what we perceive as the physical universe. Anyway, that's my higher power. So I came into the 12-step fellowships in 2010, and I was agnostic, I would say. I wasn't an atheist. I was agnostic. I was open minded to the idea of the existence of a higher power, but I just didn't particularly believe in anything. Having said that, the morning after my last drink in 2009, on September the 8th actually, was the morning after the last drink. On that morning, I just knew that I couldn't do it anymore. I'd got absolutely wasted the night before, drank 2 or 3 bottles of wine, and I just knew I couldn't do it anymore. And I got down on my knees and I prayed to a God that I had, no particular belief in. I just, again, intuitively, it's that intuition, that voice inside, like deep down within you, there's this voice inside that tells you kind of right from wrong. Well, that to me is God, and that kind of voice was the voice that said, you need to ask for help here. So I did. I got down on my knees and I said a prayer, and the prayer went something like, please help me, I can't do this anymore, just please help me. And when I stood up from that prayer, it just, like, something around my heart, kind of dislodged, and I had this kind of feeling of serenity, and the war in my mind was just over. There was no kind of, will I drink today, will I not drink today? It was just over. And I've never had a drink since that morning, and I didn't go straight into 12-step fellowships. It was another year before I went to my first meeting. And in that year, I went from feeling physically and mentally fantastic for the first kind of couple of months. I was living in Australia at the time, actually, and my partner and I had flown out there indefinitely, potentially going to live over there. And the first couple of months feeling great, and then slowly but surely the restlessness, irritability and discontentment of every alcoholic, the underlying spiritual malady, started to creep back into my life. And by about 7 or 8 months, I was feeling really, really unwell mentally. I was becoming anxious, feeling quite depressed. I was trying to exercise it away by running 3 or 4 miles every day, and it just wasn't working. And by nine months, I was homicidal and suicidal. I just hated everybody around me, and I didn't want to be here anymore. And I rang my dad, who had been in recovery for about 20 years by this point, and he said, there's somewhere where you can go for that, son. And I knew that he meant 12-step fellowships, and I just thought, absolutely no chance. You're weak and you're religious. I was like really arrogant and really prideful, and I thought, I don't need those people, and I don't need help. And 3 months later, we'd got flown back from Australia to live back in the UK in London, and I was so miserable and so depressed that I knew that I was either going to drink again, I was going to kill myself, which I didn't have the balls to do, and I would never do that to my family, or the third option was go to a 12-step meeting, and that's the option that I took, and that's the best decision that I've ever made in my life. I was then introduced to the 12 steps, and through the process of taking the steps with my sponsor, and doing all the things that were suggested over a long period of time, like doing service at the meetings, ringing people regularly, being honest, being open-minded, and being willing to do what was asked of me, I got well. I gradually got more and more sober minded, because the mental illness was subsiding due to doing the work, and if anybody's thinking of like, what does the work entail? Well, taking the 12 steps is simply reading through the book, the Alcoholics Anonymous big book with a sponsor, and then doing some writing. It's basically like a form of therapy. So So that's what I did. And through that process, I was introduced to the concept of my own higher power, a higher power of my own understanding. And that's something that has progressed over time. It's not something that was like absolutely concrete and remains concrete. It's something that I've had to work on, like any good relationship really. I've had to work on that relationship with my higher power. And basically, you know, whether I'm talking to thin air or whether I'm not talking to thin air doesn't make any difference to me. The point is that in order to communicate with this thing that is everywhere and that is deep down within me, I have to do two very simple things. One of them is to pray. I don't necessarily have to get down on my knees, but I think that in the act of getting down on your knees, it's very humbling. It's kind of like surrendering yourself to the concept of something greater than yourself. So I try and do that as often as I can. But you don't have to. You know, I often pray in the car. I pray on the toilet sometimes. So praying is asking, you know, the universe, your higher power, God, what can I do for you today? How can I be of service to other people? And the other really important part is meditation. So for me, meditation is about sitting down in the quiet, trying to quiet my body and my mind as best as possible. You know, my mind is always running. I very rarely get any absolute peace of mind from the thoughts that keep kind of just coming in. With you know, I'm not controlling my thoughts just happen. But you know, in that quiet, I tend to receive the answers to the questions that I might not have even asked. Again, that intuitive voice inside tells me what's the next right thing to do in my life. And then it's up to me whether I choose to do those things or to not do those things. Usually if I don't do those things, things don't go so well for me. If I don't follow my intuition. If I do what my mind is telling me, which is basically most often my ego telling me what it thinks I need to be happy, usually I don't end up happy, and the people around me don't end up happy either. So that is the process that I go through each and every day, asking my higher power for direction and hopefully receiving that direction through meditation. And for anybody that's watching this that might be struggling with the concept of a higher power due to religion, you know, they might have been brought up in a religion, or they might know everything there is to know about religion and spirituality and philosophy and just think it's a load of old bullshit. My advice is to just give it a try, because I've tried the way of faith and it really, really works, and I've tried the way of no faith and it really doesn't work. You know, when I was drinking and using drugs, I had absolutely no faith whatsoever. I thought I was God. I thought I was in control of everything, and my life wasn't really going anywhere. And since I've been in recovery and I've handed my will and my life over to the care of my higher power as I understand it, my life has just gone from strength to strength. And essentially that's what gives me the confidence to do my podcasts, to do these videos, to hopefully pass on, you know, a positive message of recovery to people that might be struggling. And I've had periods in my recovery where I've lost my faith, and well, if you want to read the stories of what happened to me when I lost my faith, I wrote a book called Anonymous God, and it's all about coincidence and synchronicity and serendipity and spiritual signposts. And anytime I've ever lost my faith and asked for a sign, my higher power's always come through and given me one, and just given me a little tap on the shoulder as if to say, I'm still here, it's all down to you, mate. You know, it's up to you. If you believe, I'll help you out however you need the help. And yeah, that's what keeps me living my life in faith. I think I just wanted to add to the chat from before that there's lots of people in recovery who don't believe in God at all, that don't have any belief in any type of higher power, like, you know, what you would class as a true atheist. And there's nothing wrong with that. It says in in the literature that, you know, if you can't come to your own conception of a higher power, then the group will suffice, as in the fellowship and the people. And absolutely that does work for some people, because I know them and I've heard them share their life stories and their experience, and they've managed to stay clean, sober and sane, you know, for years without having any kind of belief in any type of God. However, the majority of people that I've heard share in that way have still had to perform certain spiritual activities, namely meditation and prayer. So despite them not having any belief in any kind of higher power or deity, they most often still pray and they still meditate in order to keep themselves clean and sober. Now that might sound extremely paradoxical, but nobody knows if there's a God. You know, nobody knows if there is any higher power. Nobody knows if there's just nothing, you know. But in the act of surrendering to, I suppose, kind of like your innermost self, really, in the act of quieting down and just, I suppose in a way, you're having a quiet word with yourself, as we say, and the act of that action just really, really helps. So, you know, for anybody out there that has absolutely no interest whatsoever in coming to believe in a power greater than themselves, you can still get sober, you can still get clean, you can still live a good life. And the most common experience that I do hear, however, is that people who kind of think that way, as I did, tend to change their minds after a while, just simply because the evidence becomes too great that there is something bigger going on. And I think the great thing now is that it's becoming much more socially acceptable, and probably the reason why I'm quite comfortable, you know, having these conversations with my mobile phone and posting them on social media, is because it's much more socially acceptable now to talk about spiritual things and God and higher powers and meditation and Buddhism and, you know, all those things that were kind of much more, I suppose, taboo in a way in recent years. And you know, it means that you can do whatever you want, talk about whatever you want, and not feel like you're going to get judged for it as much, which I suppose is the reason why, you know, I'm doing these videos and posting them on my social media, because I don't really care what other people think, and I think that, you know, it might just help one person out there. So there you go. Say goodbye, Teddy. Goodbye. Peace and love, and goodbye for now. Hello again. Just walking Teddy in the dark. The day is over. Here he is. Hey Teddy. And I've been just thinking about forgiveness today, actually. Forgiveness is massive when it comes to peace of mind, in my opinion. And it's one of the things that through recovery we learn that when you've got a resentment towards somebody, the only person that you're really hurting is yourself, because you're letting this person who you've got the resentment towards live rent free in your head, and they might know that you've got a resentment towards them, but probably the majority of the time these people have got no idea that you're continuously thinking about them and how they've wronged you and what you should have done to get them back, or what you should have said at the time. You know, all these fantasies and scenarios that we go through in our minds just because somebody's upset us. And that can be on a gradient. It can be somebody that's just upset you a little bit, so somebody that's really, really upset you, and you're just fuming with that person, and you hate them. And ultimately, though, that anger, it hurts you only. It doesn't hurt the other person. And having all that negative energy inside, as I've experienced, is really bad for the psyche and really bad for your soul. So there's a process that we go through in recovery where we write down all our resentments, and we write down who it's towards, what they've done to us, how it affected us, and then most importantly we write down what our part in that resentment is. And what we look at where have we been selfish, self-seeking, dishonest and frightened. And the dishonesty part of it, when you come to look at that, is often, I might be resentful towards somebody because they were rude towards me. And the dishonesty part of it is always looking at whether I behave like that from time to time. Am I ever rude towards people? Well, yeah, obviously I am. Where was I selfish? If this person has been, let's say this person's stolen something from me, for example. Have I ever stolen anything from anybody? Have I ever been selfish in my life? Have I ever been self-seeking? And the answer is always yes. Anyway, you go through this process, and then in the last column, the fifth column, you write down, what do I need to do in order to change? And most often than not, the answer to that question is to accept the person for who they are, and to make amends for my part in the disturbance. And the best story that I can give about this, really, I suppose, was towards the tail end of my active alcoholism. I fell out with one of my best friends, Baggy he's called. Big shout out to Baggy. We didn't speak for, I think it was about 3 or 4 years. And basically the reason why I fell out with him, when I actually looked at it on paper, was nothing more than what I'd done to many, many other people. And I looked at my part in the resentment, and I played just as much a part in what went on as he did. So I had to take responsibility for that, and when I did, once I took responsibility for it, it took a long time. It wasn't an overnight decision, but slowly but surely it came to me that I wanted to make amends and I wanted this person back in my life. And I contacted him, and as a result of that, we're now good friends again. I was present at his wedding a couple of years ago, and he's actually going to be one of my 2 best men at my wedding, which was supposed to happen this year on the 4th of July, but got cancelled due to COVID, and I'll hopefully go ahead next year. So, you know, I went from a place of, I would never think that I would ever make amends to Baggy. I never thought that we'd be friends ever again, to us being really good friends again. So that's just one example. And the key to all this was that it gave me peace of mind. Even when I sent him an email originally to, you know, kind of make up, and I didn't know whether he was going to answer that email or not. I had absolutely no idea. But I did it to keep my side of the street clean, to give me peace of mind, to do the right thing, and it all came good in the end. And I know so many people out there at the moment that, you know, that you know, they just hate other people. They hate people. They've got resentments towards other people. They've got resentments towards places. They've got resentments towards, you know, organisations. And the only person that they're hurting is themselves. So yeah, forgiveness is a massive one. And there's a great Christian, I think he was a priest, Emmett Fox he's called. He wrote an awesome book called The Sermon on the Mount, all about Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and he was instrumental in the sobriety of a lot of the early Alcoholics Anonymous members back in the 1940s. And one of his pieces of advice, one of his golden pieces of advice was, if you've got a resentment towards someone, pray for their happiness. Pray for them for a minimum of 30 days, and that resentment will be lifted. And I've tried that as well. I've tried that process, and it worked for me. I had a resentment towards my ex-wife's stepdad, and he's dead now, unfortunately, God rest his soul. But at the time, I really did not like him, and he really, really annoyed me in many different ways. And anyway, my sponsor told me to pray for this guy, and I looked at my sponsor like he had two heads. And but you know, he suggested that I do it if I wanted to have peace of mind. So I did it. I got down on my knees and I prayed for 30 days for this guy's happiness. I asked, you know, my higher power, or the universe, whatever you want to call it, to ensure that this guy got everything that he needed to be happy in life. And the resentment left me, and I was able to be in a room with the guy without feeling any hatred towards him. So again, you know, I picked up the spiritual tools from the spiritual toolkit laid before me by my sponsor. I gave it a try, and it worked. And who knows, you know, if you've got a resentment towards somebody and then there's someone that you need to forgive, then maybe you should go through that inventory process. Give it a try. Anyway, peace and love, and goodbye for now. Hello again. Another TED walk. There he is, having a good look around. One of the subjects that I have written about in my books a lot is spiritual awakening, which sounds pretty pretentious really, I suppose, these days. Joe Rogan doesn't like the word spiritual, and he thinks that people that use that term are often kind of mansplaining, well, especially men anyway. But the reason why I've written about it a lot and use that term is because in the Alcoholics Anonymous big book, that's what it talks about. It talks about having a spiritual awakening as a result of working the 12-step, or taking the 12 steps, and you know, continuing to work with those steps in your life. And I can only give my experience, which is that before recovery, when I was, especially in my mid-20s, when I was DJing, I was drinking every night, I was using drugs regularly, and I was just a bit of a nightmare basically. Sleeping around, never faithful to any of my girlfriends, never had any major career aspirations other than becoming a superstar DJ, and I was just really, really selfish basically. I had no desire to be part of a family really. I kind of, I didn't, it was all just very self-seeking, my behaviour, and material things were my driving force. So it was just all about saving up money to buy the next thing that I wanted, that I thought would make me happy. And the spiritual awakening that happened as a result of me hitting a rock bottom through alcoholism in 2009, I just, when you have a breakdown of some description, and in my case, I had an emotional breakdown 10 months after I kind of hit rock bottom through the drink. So the morning after my last drink, as I've already shared, I said this prayer, I asked for help, and then something just changed inside me. Something kind of shifted. I no longer wanted to drink alcohol anymore. I went from being dependent on it to not desiring it at all, not craving it, which in my mind is a complete miracle. So that was where the kind of spiritual awakening began. And the very next day I was in the airport flying from London to Thailand, and I would never, normally I would have gone to the bookstore and just picked up fiction and read that on the plane, and for some reason I was looking for something spiritual, and I picked up a book by Hudson Smith called The World's Religions, and I read on that flight. I read it from cover to cover. So I read all there was to know basically about every religion in the world, and it was really, really insightful. But at the same time, it kind of helped me to realise that all religions were just pointing in the same direction. All religions were trying to explain the mystery, of life, but essentially like, what is God? What is the universe? All those massive questions. That's what they were trying to explain and trying to implement kind of routine and discipline to their followers that would enable them to be part of a community that all shared a common cause. And I also realised that wasn't for me. I realised that I was kind of agnostic, really. I just wasn't religious. I just whatever God is, or was to me at the time, it was an abstract concept and not something that I felt like I needed to go to a church or a synagogue or a temple to worship. So, but as I said, I'd had this kind of awakening, and what happened from that point onwards was I went on this crazy journey of seeking and discovery that lasted a good 5 or 6 years before I came to a fairly concrete realisation about what my kind of higher power is and how it relates to me and how I implement that relationship in my life. And prior to that, it was kind of ever evolving and changing. And now it's fairly fixed in the sense that I don't have to worry about what God is or isn't. I just believe that God is everything. I believe that the universe as we understand it is God, and consciousness is manifesting itself into the physical universe, and we're just a part of that. And deep down inside every single one of us is that consciousness. So, you know, we are all part of God. We are all one with God. We are all kind of one thing, which is God. That's my understanding of it. And I suppose the point I'm trying to get to is I could never have understood that before I put the drink down and before I had this revolution in my thinking and my way of perceiving the world. It just wasn't on the cards. So I'm still the same scally mank that I've always been. You know, I'm still a bit of a rumman. I still swear. I still a bit of a Jack the Lad. I still love hard house music and house and techno and trance music, and you know, I still love watching Netflix. But at the same time, I live my life completely differently to the way that I used to live it. You know, I meditate every single day. I pray every single day. I take inventory every single day, which is kind of a diary about, you know, the way that I treat other people, and if I need to apologise to people, I do. I make apologies. And as a result, and also the huge one is I try and help other people as much as possible as well, both in recovery and outside of recovery. And I try to put my family responsibilities before everything else. And as a result of doing all that stuff, as a result of, you know, walking a spiritual path, I have peace of mind. Like, I genuinely do have peace of mind. I don't have a crazy head the majority of the time. Although I can still become a little bit obsessive about things every now and then, it's nothing like it used to be. Nothing like it used to be, and it gets progressively better. You know, the more time I have in recovery and the more I practice the principles of the 12-step program, the more peace of mind I get. And that's just the way that it works for me. So, you know, spirituality for me is just about being a good person, about not being a dickhead like I was for many, many years, even though I didn't even know that I was. And that's it in a nutshell, you know, but it doesn't just happen overnight. There's quite a lot of work that has to be put into it, at least that's my experience. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Peace of love and goodbye for now. Hello everyone, it's another Ted walk. There he is. Teddy, come on, stop eating the mud. Probably not going to do many more of these for a while because I've kind of run out of things to talk about, I suppose. But there is one thing that I just wanted to talk about briefly, which is about finding meaning and purpose in your life. Because I think when you're thinking about, I don't know if anybody's ever heard, well, most people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a kind of model for the human being, a humanist. Like when you're thinking about psychology and life coaching and that kind of thing, it's about taking a humanistic approach, which means looking at the whole person. And the majority of people fall into this model that Abraham Maslow came up with, which he called his hierarchy of needs. And what it states is that in order for a person to be happy and to have peace of mind, they must first meet their physiological needs. So, you know, food, drink, warmth. Then they must meet their safety needs, which is essentially you know, feeling comfortable somewhere, so you've got a place to live, you've got security, like a job, for example, got people around you that you feel safe with. And then you look at fulfilling your love and belonging needs. So that means having a family around you, having friends around you, having a partner, having sexual intimacy. And once you've got those things in your life. You might look at your esteem needs. Sorry, I completely forgot where I was going then. There was a duck that Teddy was chasing. Your esteem needs. So then it's about kind of becoming who you want to be, making a bit of a name for yourself. So for example, in my life, initially it was all about being a footballer, then it was all about being a DJ, and then it became about kind of building my career, my 9 to 5, in the kind of substance misuse field, and then as I kind of got deeper into recovery, it was about helping other people, and with my podcast. So my podcast became a massive focus, and obviously all these things throughout your life, as you're succeeding and getting new jobs and promoted and things that your DJing's going successfully or your podcast going successfully, then this builds up your esteem. But during that process, most people, and me included, we kind of place our material needs somewhere near at the top of our priorities. So we always want nice clothes and the latest gear and a nice car and a lovely house and a bigger house and then an even bigger house and big expensive holidays and that we might not be able to afford, and we might get into debt, and then before you know it, we've got thousands of pounds on a credit card, but we look good and we're going on loads of holidays, and we're driving a really nice car, we're mortgaged up to the hilt, but everything from an outsider's perspective, everything looks fantastic, but inwardly that doesn't necessarily mean that you're happy. And the final kind of part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs was self-actualization. And in the kind of the area of self-actualization, the best way that I've heard it described is becoming the person. Oh, sorry, Teddy. Becoming the person that you. Becoming the person for other people that you always wanted for you. So, throughout your life, you might have been always wanting somebody to come along and help you to achieve your goals and, to put their arm around you and give you that piece of advice that you might need at any given time. Give you some love and affection and just be there for you. Now, to become that person for other people without that person ever coming along for you, I think is a massively worthy goal that will give anybody's life purpose and meaning. And that is what I'm aiming to be, essentially. I'm aiming to be one of those people for other people. And I think every time somebody picks up the phone and rings me, or I pick up the phone and ring somebody else, and I ask them how they're doing, or they ask me for my help, and I'm able to offer some, not necessarily advice, but I'm able to offer some of my experience as to how I dealt with or handled a certain situation, and it helps that person. There's no better feeling than that. I've never experienced, I've sponsored quite a few men in recovery, and as my role as a team leader, I've managed quite a few people at work, and now I'm training to be a life coach as well. And I've never experienced the same level of, well, it's not, I wouldn't call it a buzz, but the same kind of level of this feeling of growth and feeling of love, really. You know, it's a feeling of love that I have from helping another person. You know, when you listen to somebody share really vulnerably about what's going on for them, and you know, you just listen and offer some suggestions as to what they might do to help the situation. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, and definitely gives my life meaning and purpose. So I think what I'm trying to say is, I don't know that there's many paths to self-actualization other than becoming helpful towards other people, and anybody can do that. It doesn't matter what walk of life you're from, it doesn't matter what position you have in your company, you can be helpful to somebody. You can always, every single day, think, okay, what can I do today to be helpful to somebody else? And it just really works. So I'll leave it at that. Teddy's having a poo, so see you, Teddy.
Thanks for listening, and if you've been affected by any of the issues discussed in the podcast, please see a range of mutual aid organisations in the show notes. Also, don't forget that you can support the Life in Recovery podcast by visiting patreon.com/lifeinrecovery. Peace and love, and goodbye for now.